Even if I've done 100 million divorces,
Mm-hmm.
not any of them have been alike.
That's right.
They all have pieces, like I can usually see like dynamics happening, and that helps me, right, understand some underlying issues. But reality is no business that I've ever looked at has ever been the same. And
That's
so
right.
I think that you do kind of have to, like kind of zen yourself, clear it out, pray, whatever it is that you kind of center yourself. Because I think that people also, and some people have talked about this, being a mediator is emotionally draining as well.
Oh, yeah.
And so you have to kind of go in and then come back out. Okay, we're not going to take all this with me, because that's a lot of pain and anger that is not mine at all, right? But we have to be there in the moment, and we have to understand it. So I think there is a lot of that there, just to keep your own self-centered and maybe
That's right.
focused.
Melissa, you don't even know how spot on you are in that. I attended a 2-year, he did 1 year and then 2 years, with William Ury and Thomas Hubel, he's a mystic. We all know who William Ury is, of Getting to Yes. They did a 2-year mediators campfire talk, is what they ultimately called Mediate and Meditate. And it was, so William Ury talks about going to the balcony as a mediator, which means, looking down with an open mind at that, even at our own behavior, so that we're moderating our own behavior during that, and helping our clients do that too, But one of my favorite things in that I use a lot, that people enjoy, is a quote by William Ury. He says, "Speak in anger and you'll make the best speech you'll ever regret." So understanding when people are speaking in anger, that is not their truth.
Right.
Their truth is when they're speaking, that's a reaction. So when we're responsive, our job is to help people become responsive and not reactive. So meditation is a great way to do that. And it is becoming popular and common, not, to sit in a yogi position and,
Right.
but to center and mostly stay in the moment. Because our reactions are also always tied to our past. They're tied to what we know in the past. They're never about what's going on in this moment, right?
Yeah.
So our responses are. So you're spot on with that. It's and bringing that, emotions are contagious. So if we're riled up or responsive or reactive, our clients will sense that. You can feel that in a room.
Yeah. And my friend Mike Gregory told me once that it's harder to be an active listener. Like normally we're all listening, right? Kind of. I'm not always listening, but I try. But we're listening. But to be an active listener, we have to just listen without trying to calculate our response.
Right.
And that's hard, because even now that we're talking, right? We're listening, but we're like, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? And it's the same thing in mediation, to just listen. And that's where I think some techniques of mirroring or repeating or reframing help you, because then that gives you the time to think about your response, right? It's all a cadence in some respect. And how do you give yourself some time to think of your response so that you can actively listen when you're in the moment and hear what they're saying, not like, oh, that's a good point. Oh, which is all of our brain's natural tendencies, I think.
I keep a little notepad next to me, and I'll jot down a word if I can, so that I can stay with you, because like earlier, I completely forgot what I was going to say. I always think of that as a bad sign, but maybe it's a good sign. Maybe it's because thanks. Or dementia.
You won't know about it though. It's fine.
Elliot, you're about to say something.
Elliot?
I forgot. No, I'm kidding. I think it's important that I come in calm and optimistic and open.
Okay.
So when someone has anger, you don't shut it down. You let the storm go. You let the storm pass through. You try not to take it personally, even though it might feel personal at times. You have to understand why it does, because of who you are in the process. And then stay calm, stay optimistic. Because like Kim said, it is contagious. It does affect a person. And if they feel as though their anger has been heard and perhaps validated without necessarily agreeing, you're entitled to that feeling. Now let's think about how to work through that so that you can be in a better place.
Yeah, I think the frequency of the room is set by the highest frequency person. And so if you can't kind of pull that person back down in some capacity, which in general, when somebody gets to that heightened emotional, everybody else escalates with them, right? And so that's how you keep the power. Whereas if you have the mediator is kind of staying here, which is hard. It's hard to not get, as an empath, it's hard to not get emotionally charged when other people's are. And that's where I think it takes the centering, is to kind of pull it down and say, no, I'm going to stay. It also kind of, maybe, Kim, you deal with this in your work, is the grief process. In grief, I think, or if you have kids, go into the emotion, go all the way. In some, I'm like, if you're mad, if you're whatever, like you were saying, Elliot, go all the way in. Are we done? Now let's come back. Because again, if this has been pent up, and I've always been wanting to say this because you wronged me when you threw away those dishes, or, whatever it is, sometimes it's just something that we didn't even know, that wasn't a huge deal, we're not perceiving it to be a huge deal, but to get it done and aired and out changes the whole dynamic. And so that's why I've always been like, no, we can't, I deal with divorce, and they're like, how do you deal with the emotions? And I was like, well, but they're not my emotions, I can be understanding that going through that process, you're going to have some serious emotions. I can also control how far I take you down the path, because there's, oh, my husband is horrible. And there's the person that comes in and say, yeah, tell me how horrible they are. And then there's the other people that say, I understand, I think husbands sometimes do act horrible. I get it. Mine does sometimes too. But they also have some benefits. Like, I haven't taken the trash out in a decade or more, it's just not on my list anymore, so there is, you control and I don't think it's positivity or negativity. I think you control the energy. And if you can, and it's not like saying, stop crying. Don't cry. You're making everybody embarrassed. You're making us uncomfortable. It's like, do you need some space? Do you need some time? Should we, what do you feel that you need, as opposed to me saying what you should do? And I think that that's a different, space. To me, mediation and all of this, because I deal with numbers and people have really heightened emotions about money. It's all psychology. It's all interpersonal dynamics. And to me, if you can tune in to people, I think you can be a good mediator. And then you layer in all the stuff that we've talked about. But a lot of that is in connecting on a human level. And if that's a difficulty, I think that that's a difficulty in some of the mediation, unless, that's the kind of personality that's required, of course. But
well said.